the reactions.
Thanks, Helen.
Welcome, John.
Welcome yourself. Glad to see everybody, and it looks like we are live streaming successfully on YouTube, so that's great. And it looks like it is 2 o'clock, so I'm going to officially call this meeting to order. Welcome, everybody. Thank you for taking time out of a busy Saturday to spend a few minutes with United Homeowners Association. I'm John Heath, president of UHA. Appreciate the opportunity to meet with everybody and share some information, ideas, and be encouraging to one another as we continue to deal with all these crazy things going on in our world. Exciting and challenging at the same time. Before we officially start, as always, I want to ask for permission from one or more of the elders, somebody that has a little more gray hair on their head than I do. If you want to just wave or nod your head and let us know it's okay to proceed with the meeting, I'd appreciate that. Joanne, Linda, all right, Beverly, thank you. We appreciate that. Before we get into our first speaker and first presentation, I want to report to you all, I was honored this past Tuesday on behalf of UHA and our entire community to represent us at the homegoing service of Dr. Art Fields. Dr. Fields was the founding president of UHA back in 1979, and just a tremendous person. It was a small service because of COVID, but I was one of 15 or 20 or so people, and in fact, was honored to say a few words. So one of the things that we did was we shared a resolution, which I'd like to share with everybody now. It's in the chat. You can download it and review it at your leisure. But if you guys don't mind, real fast, I'm gonna just officially read it into the minutes of this meeting for everybody's benefit. And you can probably read faster than I can, so bear with me. This is Resolution 2021-01, Resolution of UHA honoring the life and legacy of UHA founding president, Dr. Art Fields, and authorizing official actions related thereto. Whereas UHA2 is a nonprofit mutual benefit corporation that represents more than 11,000 residents of Windsor Hills, View Park, and View Heights, whereas UHA2 is the successor in interest to the original UHA founded in 1979 by Dr. Fields and several other neighbors to represent and advocate for the best interests of our unincorporated communities. Whereas Dr. Fields and other neighbors, including Mr. Brantley, Mr. Ford, and Mr. Johnson, responded to a proposal to develop the old Mayfair Market at Slauson and Angeles Vista into a skating rink by going door to door throughout this entire community and organizing their neighbors to respond to our community's serious concerns about this proposal. And whereas after successfully defeating the proposed skating rink development, Dr. Fields recognized the critical need to form UHA as an umbrella organization to respond to major issues and impact the entire community, called a meeting of several neighbors where he first presented the idea to establish UHA. And whereas as a result of that original meeting, Dr. Fields led the effort to contact other neighbors, organize a larger community meeting that ultimately resulted in the formation of UHA to represent all 3 unincorporated communities as a unified umbrella organization. And whereas as the founding president of UHA, Dr. Fields directed the organization's effort to preserve, protect, and beautify our community for many years, and is personally responsible for the defeat of multiple harmful proposed development projects, the establishment of Kenneth Hahn State Recreation Area. He did that in partnership with some of our elected officials at the time, and many other actions that ultimately benefited our entire community. On behalf of more than 11,000 of our members, UHA hereby presents this resolution to acknowledge and honor the trailblazing work and community leadership exemplified by the life and work of Dr. Arthur Fields. So I'll let you guys read the individual findings and sections, but I do want to highlight this one here, Section 2, dedication to honor Dr. Arthur Fields, the member of UHA, hereby pledge and affirm that we shall dedicate our work on all UHA2 business during the remainder of the 2021 calendar year to the life and legacy of UHA founding president, Dr. Arthur Fields, and we shall convene and adjourn all of our general meetings this year in his honor. So that's what we did, and we presented a copy of this to Mrs. Fields, and actually I have some other stuff to share with her because we were able to get together, as you can see, and we have several former UHA board members and presidents who signed, as well as all the current board members. So just thought I'd share that with you all as a way to start the meeting and take a minute to acknowledge not only Dr. Fields and the great contributions that he's made, but we truly all stand on the shoulders of giants. And it's important to take a moment and acknowledge that and let them know how much we appreciate them, of course, to the extent we can while they're here, so they can actually hear it and appreciate it. So that being said, again, I want to thank you all for being here. We are honored to have as our first presenter, our neighbor, LA County Assessor Jeff Prang. I'm going to see if I can touch on the highlights of Jeff's bio. And Jeff, sorry, I should have worn a tie. If I had known you were going to be dressed up, I'd have put a tie on my t-shirt here. But anyway,
all right.
LA County Assessor Jeff Prang was elected in 2014 as the 27th assessor for the County of Los Angeles and re-elected in 2018. He's originally from Warren, Michigan, and he served 18 years as a council member for the city of West Hollywood, including 4 terms as the mayor of West Hollywood. So he's no stranger to politics. I note that in his bio, it points out that Mr. Prang was instrumental in implementing sweeping reforms to ensure that the strictest ethical guidelines rooted in fairness, accuracy, and integrity would be adhered to in the assessor's office. And Jeff, that's always appreciated. I wish more of our public officials emphasize that up and down the ranks. That's critical. And as I mentioned earlier, Assessor Prang, who I call Brother Jeff, lives in Baldwin Hills Estates, or what we call the Dons, with his husband, Ray. And we're happy to welcome Jeff here to spend a few minutes talking about Prop 19 for those of you that have real property that you plan to bequeath to your protege, heirs, offspring, etc., either as parent-child or grandparent-grandchild, or if you're 55 and older and plan to transfer property, you want to pay close attention to what our assessor has to share with us. So Jeff, the floor is yours, sir.
Thank you so much, John. Am I coming through okay?
Loud and clear.
Good deal. Well, it's great to be with all of you this afternoon. Thank you for taking a few minutes of your day to visit with me. I'm happy to share some information about my office as well as about Proposition 19 and how that impacts everybody. I usually like to begin my remarks when I speak to community groups to tell you just briefly what the assessor does, but as important, what the assessor does not do. The one thing I do not do that everybody thinks I do is collect taxes. There's another guy who does that, and he's got a very intuitive title. He's called the tax collector. I'm responsible for valuing property. As the assessor, you may not know that but I'm one of 3 county-wide elected officials. The other 2 are much better known than I am. Based on recent newspaper stories, that may not be such a good thing these days, but they are the district attorney and the sheriff. I administer a department which has about approximately 1,200 employees. We're in 6 locations throughout the county, and about half of my employees are real estate appraisers. And we're the largest local property assessment agency in the United States. We're responsible for establishing the value for over 2.5 million real property parcels and business assessments annually, last year valued at almost $1.8 trillion. And as you can see on the chart on your screen, the assessor has a symbiotic relationship with several other departments, which each have responsibility for different pieces of the administrative property tax system, primarily the auditor controller, as well as the treasurer and tax collector. And the way it works is when my office receives a copy of the deed from the registrar or a building permit from the city, we then complete the assessment of value. The auditor controller is the one who tells you how much you owe, and it's the treasurer tax collector that mails your bills and collects the payments. And last year, property taxes that begin with my office's valuation provided over $17 billion in revenue for local vital public services, such as public health, hospitals, parks, libraries, roads, etc. And as you might imagine, property tax is now more critical than ever because a lot of other traditional sources of revenue from that local government depends on, such as sales tax, revenues from tourism, and even parking fines have declined as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic. In addition to real property, which includes land and improvements, most people understand that, but I also I'm responsible for assessing the value of personal property, business personal property, which includes furniture, equipment, machinery. It also includes aircraft, both commercial aircraft, general aviation aircraft, mobile homes, boats, and race horses. Let me jump down now to talk a little bit about Proposition 19, and I appreciate the opportunity to discuss this with you. John and I spoke a couple weeks ago about some of the, I would say at the time I thought they were unintended consequences of Prop 19. I'm now learning that they actually were not unintended, but planned in many ways. So you don't know about
ADUs.
Sorry if we had a little bit of feedback there for a second. So Proposition 19 was sponsored on the November ballot last year by the California Association of Realtors. It passed by about 1 or 1.5%. One of the challenges that assessors, and there's an elected assessor in each county, is we're facing the fact that the proposition was placed on the ballot at the very end of a very busy legislative session in a very short period of time without a lot of discussion. And as you can imagine, property tax administration is not simple. It's extremely complex. And when we talk about things that are down in the weeds, that's where property tax administration lives. And because it was rushed onto the ballot, it didn't get a lot of discussion. There was not a great opportunity for assessors to weigh in. There's a lot of problems in the how that measure was drafted and our ability to interpret it and to actually enforce it. So I, along with the other 57 state county assessors, have been working since November to identify the deficiencies in the measure's language that are going to have to be addressed before we can administer it properly. There's large legal and administrative voids in the measure that's already causing uncertainty and confusion. And as the months progress, I would say it's going to create chaos in the system, primarily because we need legislative interpretation in order to determine what the measure says and what it intends. And people are going to be coming to me. Unfortunately, I'm not a policymaker. I can't interpret law. I can only do what the law says. And I'll give you some examples of the challenge that's going to cause for me and other assessors in just a moment. So if you don't know everything about Prop 19, it has, I'll explain those. There's two major components. And the first one is actually something most people feel pretty good about. It essentially makes your property tax base portable. Once you buy a home, that will become your property tax base for eligible homeowners into the future. It allows homeowners who are over 55, severely disabled, or those who are victims of a natural disaster, such as the recent fires, to transfer their property tax base with them when they sell their home and purchase a new one. It makes a number of changes to the previous law, known as Proposition 60. And under Prop 19, it allows eligible homeowners, again, seniors, the disabled, natural disaster victims, to transfer their assessed value, their property tax basis, anywhere in the state. Under the previous law, you could only transfer it to one of 10 counties. It'll also allow the base year assessed value to be transferred to a more expensive home, unlike the previous law, which limited it to a home of equal or lesser value. And it also expands the number of times that you can transfer that property tax basis from 1 to 3. This part of the measure goes into effect on April 1st, a very aggressive implementation date for assessors and for the Board of Equalization to figure out how to apply all these new laws. The other part, which is even more disconcerting, deals with what we call intergenerational transfers. So part of the campaign last fall, you may recall, focused on an example of very wealthy property owners. And I think they used the example of the family of Lloyd Bridges, the late actor who had a home in Malibu for many decades. And when he died, his sons, also actors, I think it was Jeff and Bo Bridges, inherited that home, but they never lived there. Instead, they leased it out for $15,000 to $20,000 a month. But because Lloyd Bridges had owned it so long, his property tax base was only $5,000 a year. And a lot of folks thought that was inequitable and to creating a legal loophole for those who Proposition 60, the law was not intended. It was really intended to keep the cherished family home in the family, not to create a separate windfall revenue stream at the expense of property tax revenues. But one of the things I've learned over the last couple of months is that Prop 19, while it did indeed close the loophole for the super rich who were inheriting these low property tax rates, but it closed the loophole for everybody. Even if you just have modest real estate holdings, which in my view is turning out to be somewhat regressive and has a disproportionate impact on working families, middle-income families who may just have a home, maybe a rental property, not necessarily wealthy people, but who would hope to leave something to their heirs. Prop 19 places new limits on the inheritance of the assessed value of the family property, and changing the rules that apply to transfers between the parent and their children, or in some cases, grandparents and grandchildren. So under the previous law, which was called Proposition 58, that was enacted back in 1986, parents were allowed to transfer to their children their primary residence, and that residence could be of any value, and the children could inherit the assessed value of that for tax purposes without resulting in a reassessment and a new tax rate for that home. And there was no requirement that the children live in the property. The previous law also allowed you to give your children up to $1 million in additional property without reassessment, such as a rental home or a commercial property. This component of Prop 19 went into effect last month on February 16th, an absurdly aggressive implementation date that we were not prepared for as administrators. The state wasn't prepared for with enabling legislation. However, effective February 16th, Proposition 58, known as the parent-to-child exclusion, has been repealed, and Prop 19 is now the new law in effect for those transfers. Some of the elements of Prop 19 that are important to note. So the only property that your children can inherit from you without a reassessment is your primary residence. Unlike the previous law, no other property now qualifies for those tax benefits. Secondly, the child or grandchild in some cases must make that home their primary residence within 1 year of the transfer, and they must also file a homeowner's exemption within that 1 year. This is going to create some public service issues for us because even under the previous law, Proposition 58, most people don't know that when there's a death of a property owner, you're required within 150 days to notify my office. They don't know that you may have to fill out forms. Thousands of people inherit property without knowing these steps. Sometimes they don't learn until the next year after they've gotten supplemental tax bills. Under Prop 19, after that 12-month period elapses, there's nothing I can do to remedy that. Under Prop 58, we were usually able to unravel things and at least provide that tax benefit prospectively. The other thing about Prop 19 is while you can still inherit the property, you can inherit a portion of the assessed value. And for simplicity's sake, if your home that your children are going to inherit is worth $1 million or less, they can inherit that home and their taxes won't increase. But if the home is worth more than $1 million, their taxes will increase. And we have to implement a relatively complex equation that creates a blend of the inherited tax base of the parent with a market-based tax base for that value that's over $1 million. So essentially, if you had, let's say you had a home which was worth $1.5 million and you owned a 8-unit apartment building, the apartment building is going to be reassessed to market value and your kids will have to pay the new taxes. The home that you live in will also be reassessed, and they will now have an increase in their property taxes. They'll inherit on the first $1 million your tax rate, and on the additional $500,000 value, there will be a market-based tax rate. And as I mentioned earlier, there was a bit of a deliberate trade-off in the drafting of Prop 19. I thought these were an oversight, but it doesn't appear that they were. There was a decision made in drafting of the measure to increase the tax benefits for seniors and the disabled, But because there is a risk by having a portable low tax base that could be moved from county to county or throughout the county, there was a potential negative impact on revenue. So they made up for that prospective loss of revenue by reducing the tax benefits for, at least in my opinion, for working people and middle income people who had property that they wanted to leave to their children. I believe that the consequence is that this is disproportionately impacting families who are trying to build generational wealth for their children and heirs. In many ways, owning property and real estate has been the first rung or two of the ladder of creating some financial, a successful financial future for your children and heirs. I believe this is going to have a negative impact in that regard. We've been doing the best we can do to get information out to the people about what these changes will mean, particularly how it will affect estate planning. Unfortunately, this component's already gone into effect, and there's really nothing that can be done about it. It's now the law, and it was done by constitutional amendment. So any changes would have to be done by ballot measure. I've spoken to our new state senator, Sydney Kamlager, and told her my concerns about this measure. I've been speaking to a lot of realtor groups, chambers of commerce, other community groups who are concerned about this intergenerational transfer. I've also spoken to Senator Steve Bradford, who's you may know as the chairman of the Legislative Black Caucus, and because I believe that this new law may disproportionately impact the Latino and African American community disproportionately. So Prop 19 was also billed as a big revenue generator. Well, I don't have great information at the moment. My staff have done a back of the envelope analysis, and they're anticipating that Prop 19 in LA County will generate about $11 million in revenue. By itself, it seems like a lot, but keep in mind that that $11 million will have to be shared between 88 cities, 81 school districts, 52 special assessment districts, plus the county itself. So it's by no means a panacea of new revenue.
Hey, Jeff.
Yes, sir.
Sorry for interrupting. I don't know if you plan to address this, but a question came up. If you put your children on title prior to your death, do these reassessment issues still apply?
If they did it before February 16th, the old law would have been in effect. If they do it now, the new law is the applicable law. So we were actually a bit overwhelmed prior to February 16th because people who had planned to leave their property to their children suddenly realized that the clock was ticking and ended on February 16th. So they're scrambling to make those transfers before the new law went into effect. I'm just about done, and I'm happy to get into any questions. One of them is I did want to because of the high volume of inquiries we've got, we've developed a web page specifically dedicated to Prop 19 on my website. Has a lot of information, resources, and tools. I particularly wanted to highlight what we call the Proposition 19 Exclusion Calculator. Bit of a mouthful, but essentially if you're concerned about what the new tax rate will be for your children when they inherit your property, you could just, in this tool, you can type in your property address or your assessor's identification number and the fair market value, and it would tell you approximately what the new tax rate would be. We also have, I recorded a webinar, which is on my website. We had estate planning experts and CPAs to give you some additional information on the sort of estate planning concerns that have been raised about Prop 19. And we're also developing another tool called the Base Year Value Transfer Calculator. So if you're a senior and you want to buy a more expensive home, in that case, the tax rate would be higher. It would be less than the market rate, but more than your current home. So this base year calculator will help you determine what your new property tax would be. And again, my website is assessor.lacounty.gov, and we have a page on there specifically for Prop 19. That pretty much wraps up what I wanted to talk about today. I did want to let you know I brought a couple of my staff members. Robert Izazaki is a special assistant in my office, and he is an expert on Prop 19. Also, my field deputy, Ted Ogwin, who's been running the PowerPoint. And I did also want to, one last thing on my website, if you're interested in keeping in touch with our office about information about Prop 19 and other property ownership related issues, We have a monthly newsletter you can sign up for, and I encourage you to do so.
Hey, Jeff, Robert, and Ted, we really appreciate you guys being here, especially on a Saturday. I'm going to ask folks that have questions to raise your hands in Zoom. And for those that are calling in and can't do that, you can press *9 on your keypad, and that'll let us know that you have a question. And in the meantime, Jeff, if you don't mind, I'm going to see if I can scan through the chat and pick up a couple more questions for you.
Absolutely.
Many of my neighbors are living with their elderly parents and caring for them. How does Prop 19 impact those children's tax liability upon the death of the parent for those who continue to live in the home?
So the parents, the children live in the home, and the children's name is on title or is not on title?
Yeah, that's a good question. Maybe.
Yeah. So if they're planning to inherit if they're living in that, well, I'll just give a couple of answers to that. If they're living in the home together, they're going to inherit the property from their parents, and that the value of that property is under $1 million. They can inherit the home and the current tax base. If the home is over $1 million, when the parents pass, remember you got to do two things. One, file a change of ownership, death of real property owner form with my office. Two, fill out the Proposition 19 form, which indicates you want to receive the property tax benefit. If the home is over $1 million, you're going to get an increase in the taxes from what your parents were paying. It won't be based on it won't be a complete reassessment of the property. It'll be a partial reassessment for that value that's over Prop 19. This equation can be a little bit confusing, but it's we put this up on the screen to give you an idea, kind of a sample of what this equation would look like. So if I could just walk through this really quickly to give you an idea of what the tax impact would be. Number one, let's say you have your home is currently taxed at $425,000. Under Prop 19, we take that taxable value, we add $1 million. $1 million was a number that the legislature determined to come up with a total of $1.4 million. We then determine whether the fair market value exceeds the sum of that taxable amount plus the $1 million. So the fair market value of the property is $1.7 billion. So you've got a lot of equity there. And then we ask, is that number greater than the taxable value plus $1 million? In this case, it is. So going to point number 3, we take the fair market value, we subtract the sum of the taxable value plus $1 million, and we come up with a difference of $324,000. So we then add that $324,000 to the existing taxable value, which means that your children would inherit the property with a new tax base of $750,000. Under the previous law, Prop 58, the new combined base year value would be $425,000. There'd be no change. So as you can see, there is a difference. When I did speak with some legislators who supported this measure, and I told them that this could have a disproportionate impact on middle-income families, their view was, well, the home's over $1 million, you got a valuable piece of real estate, you could sell it and walk away with a big chunk of change. I guess that's probably true. Clearly, this is not something impacting low-income people. But again, if you're middle-income people trying to provide a good fiscal, financial foundation for your children, for your grandchildren, this does reduce those benefits that you can transfer.
And Jeff, I know you have, at least I saw some of this, if not all of this presentation on your website. Is this entire presentation posted on the assessor's website where folks can refer to?
Yeah, so we have on our webinar, it's called A Guide to Inheritance. We actually go through this this formula. You're probably getting a little bit more better information, some information which is better today because we're still wrestling with the legislature to introduce enabling legislation so that we could actually make this measure work for people. So we're learning more and more as we go along.
Yeah.
I did want to say, here's some of the challenges that we have right now because we don't have enabling legislation. And because I'm not a policymaker, I can't make determinations. We have to read what's on the page. So one of the things that Prop 19 says, let's say you have 3 children who are going to inherit your property and you pass. Well, a strict reading of Prop 19 says that for your kids to inherit that property and a tax base, all 3 of them have to move into the house, which is kind of absurd. Nobody would intend that, but that's what happens when you write complex property tax legislation in the last week of a session without consulting with experts. So we need to have the enabling legislation correct that. Although the Board of Equalization did opine that if only one child, in this particular case, if only one child lives there, that would be deemed to satisfy the terms of Prop 19. But let's say, the example we used earlier, that you're living with your elderly parents. Let's say they develop dementia and you put them into memory care, and they live 2 more years before they pass. Well, under Prop 19, it says that you can inherit your parents' primary residence. Well, they're in memory care, so the home that they have lived in, they may still own it, but it's no longer their primary residence. A strict reading of the law says that you would no longer qualify to inherit that tax base. Now, obviously, that cannot have been intended, and it's absurd, but that's what the law says, and I do not have the authority to make that interpretation. That must come from the legislature. Currently, we do not have any legislation. We have some legislation pending that will address some of the concerns, but probably 80% of the measure is not being addressed in any legislation at this time.
Sounds like we need to put our shoulder to the wheel and see if we can help encourage the legislature to do some things. I'm going to see if I can get to a few folks real fast. Teresa Mack has her hand up. Teresa, can you unmute yourself?
Yes. Hi, Jeff. Nice to see you again. I have been, angry about this proposition for some time. While the enabling legislation is being worked through, if a person, is affected by the current state of the law, in the future, once interpretations have occurred or perhaps changes have happened in the law, will those families be able to go back and seek any kind of remediation or remedial adjustment to their property tax basis? Because I know I've gotten a lot of questions, and John and I were chatting just now about what types of things can be done to undo the damaging portions of the legislation. And how long will that take? And in the interim, what's the remedy for people who are going to be affected immediately?
So we don't have, Senator Hertzberg has a bill called Senate Bill 539 that addresses a few items dealing with the intergenerational transfers, maybe 10 to 20% of the whole measure. We do not have legislation right now for the remainder. And we're really struggling to get somebody to carry legislation. They're all focused on COVID and the economy, and ministerial property assessment policy isn't glamorous enough that most want to pay attention to it. But it's really important because people are buying and selling right now. These are real world, day-to-day issues. But in that legislation, if it's enacted as it traditionally would be, they would make it effective from the point that the measure went into effect. So any transactions would be corrected and curable under those circumstances. But there's a lot of things that we just don't have the answers to right now. How to deal with a transaction that began, that you sold your home before the implementation date and bought a new one after the implementation date, which laws to apply, how to apply them, what to do if there's a conflict. We still don't have answers to those.
Thanks. Tracy Purifoy, can you unmute yourself and ask your question?
Hi. What if you put your home in a trust? So my mother put her home in a trust, and let's say it's worth over $1 million, and it's left to myself and my 2 brothers. Then are we protected because it's been in a trust for a couple of years?
So there's probably not. Depends if she put it into an irrevocable trust. An irrevocable trust basically means that it's not, the change has occurred, it's your property, it can't be changed, even though it's still in your mother's trust. Under those circumstances, if that irrevocable trust was executed prior to Prop 19, you would be okay. Most people, though, use an irrevocable trust. And under irrevocable trust, the property belongs to your mother until she passes. And that's when, and your mother's date of death would be the change in ownership. You would be under the new provisions of Proposition 19. Does
Great.
that
Can we get this repealed?
it is a constitutional amendment, so the only way to change it is to go back to the ballot, and the next window for the constitutional amendments are now in even years in November, so it would require a ballot measure in November 2022. So I'm hearing there's a lot of people are very, very frustrated. You know, they understood this intergenerational transfer change to be dealing with super rich people. They didn't think they didn't say it was going to affect the people in your neighborhood or your family itself. And I think a lot of people feel a bit hoodwinked.
All politics is local, right, Jeff?
Indeed it is.
If we appreciate, again, you, Robert, and Ted being here. If folks want more information, Jeff, is there a contact point in your office that they can reach out to?
I am going to put into the chat my email and my phone number.
Thanks.
That's the email that I read. I will probably, depending on your question, I will probably ask somebody else on my staff to answer it, but you can call that number or email, and we'll get you to somebody who can answer your questions.
That's great.
And please check out our website from time to time, because we'll keep a lot of information on there as well. Absolutely.
Jeffrey Prang, our wonderful assessor. Thank you, sir. We appreciate you.
Thank you so much. Thank you for letting me join you today.
If we were all together, we'd be clapping as well as shaking our fists so we can get busy organizing this constitutional amendment and ballot initiative that needs to get put out there, right?
Absolutely. Indeed.
Thanks.
Well, thanks again. Stay safe, everybody.
Thanks a lot, Jeff. All right. So we're maybe a minute behind, but that's okay. I'm going to ask, before we invite our next guests to take the floor, I'm going to ask my colleague on the UHA board, Tony McDonald-Tabor, to unmute herself and share a quick announcement with the group about our next meeting next month. Tony, go ahead.
Good afternoon, everyone. And this first spring day, we are hosting an earthquake emergency preparedness meeting next month, April 17th, Saturday at 2 p.m. The Los Angeles County Fire Department will be the presenters, and they've suggested our neighbors submit questions in advance. So please send your questions to info@uhawhbp.org. And I'm sure we all agree that earthquake and emergency preparedness is a very important topic. And our fire department personnel will provide useful information during this meeting, such as building disaster bags, reducing fire hazards in our homes, escape routes, and information on the upcoming Community Emergency Response Teams classes, which is the CERT. So you don't want to miss this meeting. Please spread the word, mark your calendars, and we hope to see you there. Thanks.
Thanks a lot, Tony. That's critical, that emergency preparedness. So just again, to clarify, our meeting next month, and as you all know, we're meeting every third Saturday at 2 p.m. with COVID, since we can do Zoom, but the entire meeting is going to focus on emergency preparedness. All right. So with that, we have, I believe we have two of our friends from the LA County Department of Regional Planning ready to share some information with us about something called the Regional Housing Needs Assessment, or RHNA, to use one of those land use planning jargon words, acronyms. Tina Fung and Zoe Axelrod are both staff for DRP, and they're gracious enough to reach out to us to spend a little time explaining, at least from their perspective, what the county plans to do to address the need for housing. And just looking at the Regional Housing Needs Assessment, it states that this is prepared by the Southern California Association of Governments. I'm not quite sure what they base this on. Maybe we can have time to talk about that. But they're indicating that almost 40,000, 39,000 low-income units and 14,000 moderate-income units are needed over the next 8 years. And that's just in unincorporated LA County. That's not the city of LA and some of these other parts of the region. So, and then there's also, they mentioned 36,000 market rate units. That's kind of interesting, especially given the rate of vacancy that's going on right now. But anyway, I will invite our two friends from regional planning, Tina and Zoe, if they're hi.
Yes, hello,
Hi,
this is
Tina.
Tina Fung with Regional Planning.
Well,
Today I actually have my colleague Connie Chung here with us.
okay,
So Connie will present the first part of the presentation, and then I will do the second part, and then we'll do Q&A. So Connie?
and if you guys need to share your screen, you have that capability, okay?
Yep,
Great.
thank you so much.
Thank you so much. So hello, we're both from the LA County Department of Regional Planning. Again, my name is Connie Chung, and I'm here with my colleague Tina Fung. And we're here today to talk about the housing element. We want to give you some background on what it is, what's included in the housing element, and our timeline for the project. We're also going to walk you through some proposed rezoning that could impact your neighborhood. And hopefully we'll have time to do some Q&A and to provide and to hear feedback from all of you, because we are here today to listen. So before I share my my slides, I just want to set things up. I think everybody knows that we're in the middle of the housing crisis and homelessness crisis as well in LA County. Rents have gone up in recent years, and as a result, many families have had to move because they can't either afford the rent or they can't afford to buy a home in LA County. Homelessness, unfortunately, is on the rise as well. Between 2019 and 2020, there was a 13% increase in the number of people experiencing homelessness. Those counts were actually completed before the pandemic, which, as you know, has caused the highest unemployment rate in the county since the Great Depression. And that might indicate that the number of people experiencing homelessness is actually much higher than the 13% increase. And then finally, 43% of households in unincorporated LA County are housing cost burdened, or in other words, spend too much of their income on housing. And there's a rule of thumb that we use for gauging affordability. And it's basically if you're spending more than 30% of your income on rent or your mortgage payments, it means that those funds are not being used for other critical needs, such as transportation or health-related costs or food. And of course, the lower income you are, the more impacted you are by this. And now I'm going to share my screen, and I'm sorry if something goes wrong.
You're doing good so far, Connie. We're thinking positive.
Okay, can you see my screen?
We can. You may want to put it on slideshow, but
All right, let's see.
there
Okay.
you go.
Great. Okay, so let's get into the housing element update and what it is. So how does the housing element address the issues that I just talked about? Well, it's been a requirement since 1969. The state has required local governments to have housing elements to ensure that every jurisdiction plans for its fair share of housing. The housing element is the county's housing policy guide for the unincorporated areas. It also identifies constraints and barriers to housing and includes programs to ensure decent, safe, and affordable housing, and addresses housing needs for those with special needs. The housing element must be submitted to the state and updated every 8 years. So the current cycle that we're in was from 2014 to 2021, and the new period will be from 2021 to 2029. So John just mentioned the RHNA, as we call it. So the housing element includes several components. The foundation of the housing element is what's referred to as the Regional Housing Needs Allocation, or RHNA. And this is the number that the state estimates for each region's housing needs for the upcoming 8 years. So The state law requires cities and counties to plan for the estimated number of homes for current and future residents through land use and zoning regulations. So the assigned allocation for the unincorporated areas for that 8-year period, that 2021 to 2029 period, is approximately 90,000 homes. And this is the largest number that the county has ever had to plan for. As part of the housing element update, the county needs to show in the housing element that there is enough land in the unincorporated areas where the 90,000 homes are allowed to be built under current land use and zoning regulations. And that's something that we refer to as the adequate sites inventory. So the county has completed a draft of that adequate sites inventory, and it shows that the county does not have enough land zoned for those 90,000 homes. As a result, the state law requires the county to include a rezoning program in the housing element. Now, it's important to note that the housing element rezoning program does not actually rezone the properties. We are simply identifying the areas that could potentially be rezoned in order to meet that 90,000 figure, the RENA. The actual rezoning would take place through future planning efforts within the next 3 years, and that 3-year time frame is dictated by state law. The rezoning program in and of itself does not require property owners to do anything or build anything, or the county to build anything. So this is, again, about zoning and the potential to build those units. So when deciding what sites to rezone, we ask the following questions. One is, where should more housing, especially multifamily housing, such as apartments or townhouses, be built in the unincorporated areas? And second, how likely is a particular site to be suitable for multifamily development in those 8 years? So when determining where to rezone to allow more housing, the main goals are to encourage housing to be built in already developed areas and to prioritize public health, safety, and equity. So the sites in environmentally sensitive or naturally constrained areas, as shown in red on this map, such as coastal areas, very high fire hazard severity zones, significant ecological areas, hillside management areas, those will not be selected for rezoning as these areas are not suitable for multifamily development. So sites that are outside of those environmentally sensitive or naturally constrained areas are then further prioritized based on additional criteria. We consider sites that are located near transit, near amenities and services, and within areas served by existing infrastructure such as public water and sewer systems. Also, to encourage diverse, inclusive, and mixed income neighborhoods, sites that are located in areas with more resources and opportunities as identified by the state when it comes to access to education and economic mobility, and those areas are identified by the state, those are also prioritized. So that's part of the criteria that we're looking at.
Connie, sorry to interrupt, but just to emphasize the point, I did understand you correctly that very high fire hazard severity zones are not a focal point of multifamily development for you guys from a planning standpoint, right?
That's correct.
Okay.
Okay. So to determine how likely a site is suitable for multifamily housing, we look at these additional considerations. We look at the age of the existing building. We also look at the value of the land in relation to what is on the site and the improvements, so that if the value of the land is greater than the improvements, then there might be a possibility that that site could be redeveloped within those 8 years. We also have looked at whether sites are contaminated, because if it's contaminated, most likely it's not going to be redeveloped because of all the additional complications of redeveloping that site. And we also looked at whether the proposed land use and zoning regulations would allow substantially more housing on the site than what's currently on the ground. So here's the timeline of the housing element. We're going to be releasing a draft housing element for public comment on April 15th, so that's coming up. We also have a draft EIR, which will be released for public review in early May. And then we're going to start the public hearing process in August. Per state law, the housing element must be certified by the state at the end of this year. And there are a number of potentially significant consequences if the county fails to have a state certified housing element by the deadline, including ineligibility for some state funding. And this isn't just for housing, but also transportation and parks related funding, as well as potential litigation by the state. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to my colleague Tina, who's going to walk you through the zone changes that we are identifying for the housing element. Thank you.
Thank you, Connie. So if you can unshare, then I can share my screen.
Yep.
Okay. So can everybody see my my screen with our project website here?
Yes.
Okay, so we created a story map in both English but also a Spanish version to sort of walk community members through the process. Some of the things that Connie covered is already in the story map. So when you click where it says interactive story map, you will see this right here. So I'm not going to repeat what Connie already talked about, but I kind of want to show you some of the maps as well. So the way the story map is organized is, again, some of the background information Connie covered, as well as the sort of methodology and the factors that we looked at when we try to, look at where these sites should, are located. And so I just want to start with this county-wide map. So this sort of sum up the distribution of the sites that are proposed for the rezoning countywide. The larger the yellow circles are, that means that more sites are selected for the rezoning. And so here, this right here is your community, Ladera Heights, View Park, Windsor Hill. And then we'll have more zoom in map for each community. But before I go there, I kind of want to give you a little bit more about information about what the rezoning program entails. So what can be built on a piece of property is determined by two factors. One is the land use category in the general plan, which provides the general intended uses and the residential density. Usually that's how many number of units per acre. And the second thing that we look at is the zoning itself. So the zone actually provides a more specific list of permitted uses, what permit types are required for different uses, as well as development standards such as height and setbacks. And so here, this table here kind of sum up the proposed land use categories in zoning that we are proposing. For the parcels where additional housing opportunities are proposed through this rezoning program, the proposed land use category is usually the one above the existing. So for example, if a lot is currently designated H30, meaning residential 30, up to 30 units per acre, then the proposed land use category would be the next one higher up, which is H50, which would allow up to 50 units per acres, and so forth and so on. So that's kind of the approach, is one step up. For areas that are currently designated general commercial, CG, the proposed land use category would be mixed use or MU. And so as part of the rezoning effort, once we figure out the proposed land use category, then we look at which zone is the corresponding one, so that the general plan and the zoning are always consistent. And so to look at specifically maps that shows your community, what you can do is you can go to the supervisorial district number 2 tab, because all the maps are organized by the sub districts. And so first you will see sort of like a breakdown of number of parcels we are proposing for rezoning in different communities within the sub districts. And then on each tab, you then will see 2 maps. You first see the land use policy map, that is the changes in the general plan that we're proposing. The second map then is the corresponding zoning change map, right? And then you can click on the name of a community, and then the map will sort of take you to that community right there. So then in Ladera Heights, there are total 6 areas we are looking at right now for the zone changes. One area is currently developed with multifamily housing, and the rest are sort of the commercial areas. So the first one and what you can do is you can click here with the plus sign to zoom in, and then zoom out is this little minus sign. And then you can move your cursor like this to further sort of navigate and zoom into like a street or intersection. And then once you click on the parcel, you can actually see specific information for that parcel, including what is the existing land use category and what is the proposed.
And Tina, sorry to interrupt, but keep in mind, we stop at La Brea. So Windsor Hills, View Park, unincorporated View Heights doesn't go any further west than La Brea. So, you know, we're close with our neighbors from Ladera Heights Civic Association, but if you want to talk to us about some of those properties further east along Slauson, that might be
sure, totally. Yeah, we just grouped them all in, you know, the county. That's how we kind of organized. But yes, so then the majority of the changes are along Slauson and some of the existing commercial area. So again, I'm going to zoom in a little bit. For example, right here on Slauson, west of Overhills Drive, some of these parcels are currently designated CG for general commercial, and the proposed land use destination is mixed use MU. And one more feature to sort of tell you about it is you can also click on this little circle here, then it will show the legend of the map. So you will see what the colors mean. So the proposed land use change, when it's orange, is the mixed use land use category. So this is one area. And then the other area that I'm going to show you is also on Slauson, further east. Let's see, this is Caniston Avenue right here. And then this is, I believe, Dean Avenue. So again, this portion, these parcels are currently in the CG land use category for general commercial, and the proposed land use category is mixed use. If you move a little bit north, another sort of segment that we are looking at is on 54th Street. And then again, these are all in orange color, meaning the proposed land use destination is mixed use, and currently it's CG for general commercial. And then the last sort of little bit of area, I'm going to zoom out a little bit, right here, right at the border with LA City. This is Victoria Avenue right here, Olympia Drive right here. I believe this is like an office building currently. And then some of these pieces are parking lots that we selected, and currently they are designated general commercial, and the proposed land use destination, it's also mixed use. And so this is pretty much how you can navigate the story map. And so that pretty much concludes my presentation. Connie and I are available to answer any questions you may have.
That's great. If you don't mind, Tina, can you, or maybe
stop sharing? Yeah, let me.
or keep it handy just in case we need it. Thanks. I don't know if any of our neighbors have specific questions, but I had some general thoughts, ideas, musings that I wanted to share with both of you while we have you here for a minute. You know, we can probably argue and go back and forth about the veracity of those RENA numbers, given that we're now in the midst of a pandemic and that data was probably collected prior to COVID. But be that as it may, I don't think you're going to get any argument from anybody here that we clearly have an affordable housing crisis, and everybody knows that we as a society and as a region need to get much better at creating and producing more affordable housing. A couple of questions and things that come to my mind is, have you guys considered any part of you know, we talk a lot about the supply side to solve this issue, but a lot of what can happen that's positive might need to happen on the demand side. In other words, the low income folks are having difficulty finding housing because their incomes are so low. And also, there's probably quite a bit of underutilized, underdeveloped, and dilapidated, quite frankly, housing stock that exists right now in and around our community, South LA, et cetera, that could be repositioned. For example, we've got on your map that you were showing, we've got 3 different motel properties that I'm aware of just within Windsor Hills and View Park at different parts of the community, you know, that probably right now are not being used for their highest and best use. And probably if we polled the community, we would get some specific feedback, complaints, you know, nuisance type issues. So might there be a way for regional planning to collaborate with communities like ours and other folks in government to figure out ways to go to those property owners and say, hey, have we got a deal for you? You know, we know about Project Room Key and some of the emergency things that have happened during the pandemic, but just on a, you know, on a go forward permanent basis, it would seem that all these motels and, you know, older rundown, dilapidated multifamily, you know, you guys get where I'm going with that. And then the last point is, if we're going to create that many affordable housing units, that subsidy's got to come from somewhere, right? Because the cost of building a housing unit is what it is. So how do we square, you know, the goal of creating, you know, X, you know, 39,000 or whatever the number is, affordable housing units just in unincorporated LA County, and however many low-income housing tax credits and affordable housing bonds and all that other nice stuff with all the fancy acronyms that I won't bore our neighbors with, but all those things that are required to produce affordable housing. It would seem that, you know, the goal, I mean, obviously we support what you guys are trying to do because the need is clear for more affordable housing. But, you know, you guys are talking about something that's here, and the reality in terms of what we can do with respect to subsidy, there's a big gap there.
So I can jump in, and Tina, feel free to jump in and kind of take turns, but just want to address some of the really great points that you brought up. Definitely income is also a very important part of the equation when it comes to housing and housing affordability. And there are definitely county programs that do focus on workforce development and economic development because at the same time that we are trying to build more housing, we are trying to also increase incomes. I'm sure you're all very aware of the county's you know, recent push for a living wage. Definitely under Measure H. Not only does Measure H, the scope of Measure H also includes services for people experiencing homelessness, but there is a very large jobs component and jobs training component part of that as well. But the fact that you're even raising this in a housing meeting, I think is fantastic. And it's just for us to take note that we really have to talk about both. So I really appreciate that comment. On the issue about dilapidated properties, I mean, part of our methodology was to the best that we could, based on the data that we have, is to identify sites that are likely to be redeveloped. So, you know, we don't live in the community. So if there might be things that you know that we don't, right?
Absolutely.
If you do know of some properties that you think are likely to be redeveloped, please let us know. That's really great input for us actually to refine the adequate sites inventory and the rezoning list. So any input that you can provide, we would actually love that. That would be a nice thing to put into the housing element. And as far as partnerships go, yes, the county has partnered to, take a multi-benefit approach in terms of, acquiring properties, partnering with different stakeholders to redevelop areas. So that's kind of like a case by case sort of thing. I think that would be a great thing to, obviously engage us with, but also the LA County Community Development Authority, and even the Second District Board Office. These are conversations that I think are really important. It's not something we can do in the housing element where we say, we're going to redevelop the property located here because that's kind of outside the scope of the methodology that we're using and the state requirements.
Right, but you can tweak the plan so that it's more in line with reality and what the the realistic expectation and needs are, right?
Well, the only thing is what I just mentioned is if you could provide stakeholder input, that could give us a better sense of the state of some properties and the likelihood that they could be redeveloped in the next 8 years. Those are things that we'll definitely note in terms of like what to include in the rezoning program and not. So yeah, I mean, we've kind of done our homework as best we can, but we don't live in the community. So that additional input is really, really important.
Got it. Let me get a couple more voices in here that have had their hands up. Helen Sellers, unmute yourself and ask your question, please.
Yes. By viewing the map that you just put up, I saw a lot of small commercial properties along Slauson that are virtually owned by individuals. And when I saw it, I was thinking that there was a time when property was taken by eminent domain and large corporations came in and started building multi-units. My question is, how are they going to basically take these properties from the individuals that along Slauson there?
So thank you for bringing that up. So as an opportunity to clarify that there's no eminent domain as part of all of this. In a lot of ways, what we're doing is we're identifying sites that are likely to be redeveloped because of the change in zoning and other real estate considerations. But we cannot just take people's property and put something on it. At least through the housing element update, there's no intention of doing that. And so I'm really glad you brought that up because that is not our intent. There's no eminent domain power associated with the housing element. So thank you for asking that.
Got it. We're a couple minutes over, but we'll keep going for a quick minute. Cherie Franklin, you had a question. Can you unmute, please? Go ahead. Oh, you remuted yourself, Cherie. Try it again.
Okay, sorry about that. So I don't know, what is the county's position on AB 115, which would mandate a 20% affordability in the commercial corridors across the state of California? That's one. And two, while yes, there's no CRA and there's no eminent domain, oftentimes what happens is zoning is changed and the owners had a different idea. So there needs to be some technical support. We don't have redevelopment anymore, but some technical support for homeowners, for property owners to reimagine. And sometimes that requires for them to make sense that they do lot mergers or partner with the properties next door so that they can actually make a property that complies with zoning. So those are some of the technical things I think are needed. What is the county going to provide? I know you guys don't directly do tax credit, support to even help people. How are you going to innovate to really help think through housing needs in the county of Los Angeles? We really need a different level of technical support.
So I can start, and again, Tina, feel free to jump in. AB 115, I believe, is by Bloom, and I think it has to do with allowing commercial properties or residential uses in commercial properties or commercially zoned properties, I believe.
Well,
And
it's actually going to mandate a 20% affordable housing when you do build, because you can do housing now, but it's a mandate. Just trying to see what is the county's position on that.
right. So some of you may not be familiar with the Inclusionary Housing Ordinance, which actually also mandates it depends on the affordability, but it also mandates affordable housing for projects that are 5 units or more. That ordinance has been in effect since December 10th of last year, so it's very new. But for that reason, and for the reason that the county does allow residential uses in commercial zones already, based on the early version that we saw of AB 115, we didn't see that it would really impact us because of our local policies that are already in effect. And your question about how can we innovate, I think that's a really great question. I mean, the housing element is the forum where we should be talking about these things. In terms of technical support, I mean, we're doing everything we can. The map that Tina showed you was kind of our way of making all this information accessible at your fingertips so that you can take a look and study and actually see the zones where we envision the rezonings to be happening. So again, if those don't make any sense to you, this is the opportunity to let us know. But we've been talking about rezoning a lot, but there are other parts of the housing element. There are programs, for instance, goals and policies. And this is where you can see the draft that we release on April 15th to see if it's really pushing the envelope in terms of the housing crisis and what we can do. So yeah, whatever input you can provide. And I think for the county to continually hear the comment, innovate, innovate, innovate. This is working, this is not working. This is really important, not only for us at the staff level, but as the housing element continues through the decision-making process, through the Planning Commission, and then onto the Board of Supervisors.
And one last follow-up, just as important. The county is very different than the city of LA in that we have many retired people who make up that income level that is skewed. We really need you to take a look at it differently. So if you look at View Park, for instance, it will say the median income is low, but that's because people are retired. We have an older population. So you're calculating a greater need for quote unquote affordable housing than is true. In fact, what we need are more market rate available or working class housing for people to downsize to, because we have many people in larger homes, but they want something quality to move to. And there's nothing for them to move to because we just don't have that housing stock. So if you could adjust that to really look at what is income and how you're defining that when you look at the unincorporated areas, I think you'll find a different shift in how you're calculating your need for affordable housing.
And the point that Cherie is making is a good one and a good place for us to segue because we're out of time. But a couple of things just in wrapping up. Tina and Connie, again, thank you guys both for being here. If there's a way for us to follow up with one or both of you directly, that would be appreciated. I'm going to issue a bit of a challenge kind of along the lines of what Cherie and others were saying, but since you have this draft, I guess, is it a draft housing element that's coming out on the 15th? I would like to suggest that we arrange for, because obviously we can't do it in this context, there's too many other things going on. But there are some people like Cherie and others that are experts in our area that need to be at the table and that need to have more of a collaborative consensus building approach with you guys that are setting these plans. We had, unfortunately, a very bad and still, quite frankly, are continuing to have a very bad experience with a multifamily property at Stocker and Overhill on the north side of our community. I'm sure you guys are aware of that, you know, litigation, et cetera. Now there's an EIR underway. But the bottom line is that's a project that never should have gotten as far as it did because the zoning and the land use designation was changed without any notification, discussion, debate, deliberation, or whatever with our community. It was just done, okay, in 2015. And that's the type of thing, if more folks at regional planning and making policy, quite frankly, were like you guys and came to us and said, hey, let's sit down and figure out a way to do this that makes sense, we could get a lot more done and not have to be going at each other's throats back and forth. So that's really my challenge and suggestion, because at the end of the day, you guys know about this affirmatively furthering fair housing requirement. You know, I think there's probably some arguments that can be made, some very strong ones about, again, the point about where do you put these affordable units? You know, how much affordability? Clearly, South LA, we have folks that we clearly need more affordable housing, no question. But mixed income is probably the best and most efficient way to do this, so that you're not just segregating and ghettoizing and creating, you know, low income communities, but you're actually creating opportunities for people to grow, expand, and build communities. So that's really the challenge that I'd like to put out there on the table for both you, Tina and Connie, both of you, if you guys are willing to open up an opportunity for us to, you know, meet with you separately, and we can gather some folks together that could really give you some critical feedback and input. I think that would be useful for both sides.
We would really appreciate that.
Yeah, and I just put our email address. It's housing@planning.lacounty.gov. So if you have any comments, feedback, questions, or you would like to schedule sort of like a working meeting to share thoughts with us, you can definitely reach us through that email address.
Great. Tell your colleagues at Regional Planning, we are not NIMBYs, but we are about smart planning and policy and development. So if we can figure out a way to do that, we'll work with you and back you 100%, okay?
Thank you so much for inviting us. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, guys.
Bye,
Have a
everyone.
good one.
Thank you.
All right, folks, moving on. Sorry, we're a little bit over. It's now 3:16 and we were supposed to get to public safety and neighborhood watch 16 minutes ago, but it is what it is. I'd like to ask our friend Captain Doug Young, who's been patiently waiting, to unmute himself. And also, I think we have Sergeant Collins who's calling in. I'm going to ask each of those gentlemen to kind of give us a quick update about their respective organizations' activities recently in dealing with public safety and kind of the high points, and then we'll have a conversation. I know we have some neighbors that have been working on building neighborhood watch and block clubs, so we'll talk about all that. Captain Young, the floor is yours, sir.
Thank you, John. Good afternoon, everyone. The last meeting we had on, what is it, January, you guys asked for assistance with dealing with the street racing program. I know that the sheriffs have been working on that as well. Sergeant Collins and I have been kind of talking back and forth on the chat about what their organization is doing and what our organization is doing. So you asked for the assistance, and we went out with our street racing task force on February 21st of this year, and we had a fairly successful operation. We were able to move the street racers out of your neighborhood. Again, we don't like to take the enforcement in your neighborhood, because if they start running and stuff like that, it creates a public safety problem for the neighbors and pedestrians and such. So we tried to, move them out of the area, and we end up with 24 citations, 7 vehicles impounded, and 13 arrests. You also reached out to us. One of the things that you also asked is for some assistance with traffic safety issues in and about the neighborhood. And you made suggestions both through this form, and also you reached out to us via our email. And we've been working Angela's Fist the last few, we always work it, but I mean, we've addressed it a little bit more frequently recently based on your suggestions and a recent traffic collision that occurred there that was caught on camera. And as my officers were reporting back, they said they made several stops for running stop signs, speed, and things of that nature. And they said the vast majority of the people were unfortunately residents of the area. And being good neighbors, we wanted to kind of educate people as much as, take enforcement. And so we gave a lot more verbal warnings than we did give tickets. And then I reached out to John afterwards and said, hey, you know what, I just want to let the neighbors know that we're out there, and we just, like I said, in being good neighbors, we want to make sure that your guys are doing your part as well.
Outstanding. Sergeant Collins, you want to unmute and weigh in on this?
Yeah, for the most part, just since we met last time, we've concentrated, and with your help, we've been able to get a little funding to have additional cars out there for street racing. And so for the month of March, we've done it each Sunday, and then we'll be doing it again tomorrow night. And so during that time, we have a dedicated sergeant, and we've had 3 additional overtime cars plus 1 car assigned to that. So we've had as many as 5 units out at one time. And then over the last couple of weeks, it's I get the reports. I was out there the first Sunday, and then another sergeant did it last Sunday, and he's doing it again this Sunday. And then, you know, we're happy to say that there have been no street takeovers, especially up at 5 Points. And there has, that first Sunday, there was a takeover at La Tijera and Centinela, which is right outside of our RD, but right on the cusp of it. But that was more of an LAPD. And then when I did get there, I did call for assistance for LAPD to respond code 3. And then they did, and they were able to get them dispersed. But and the only reason that is because one of our guys, they just happened to stumble upon it, and they were caught in it, and then they needed assistance because the crowd turned on those guys and started kicking the cars, and they damaged both fenders, and they tried to break one of the windows. So we responded. Then outside of that, the usual Stocker and Overhill, that hasn't been taken over, and then 5 Points hasn't been taken over. And so our guys have been doing some enforcement action to keep the guys out of the area. And so, you know, our strategy has worked, and hopefully if we can continue to get funding, we'll be able to continue to make it work. But if we don't, then that'll be another issue. We'll do what we can, but you know, the division's not going to fund us forever. But at least for the month of March, we're trying to do what we can to you know, keep them out of our area.
And Sergeant Collins, I'm sure there are many people within the sound of our voices that would do whatever they could, if it was writing a letter, an email, or making a phone call to whoever in the sheriff's department or elsewhere in county government to implore them to make sure they keep those resources flowing to keep our community safe. So yeah,
like I said, I mean, I worked on asking the division for money for the month of April to see. So we'll see, but I think what you've been doing, keeping the supervisor's office abreast of the issue, hopefully they can contribute some dollars. But you know, with the limited resources, if we have the money, we can make it work. But then the issue becomes when we don't, because like I said, we had limited staffing on Sundays, and so if we don't get the funding, then you know we'll do what we can, but it won't run as smooth as it is now with a car that we can put up at 5 Points with the lights on, a guy down at La Brea and Slauson, and then 2 or 3 rovers plus the sergeant to issue citations. And then I think once the crowd sees cars being pulled over and lights flashing, then they just tend to keep going.
And somebody just posted in the chat, sorry to cut you off, Sarge, but this is a good point, and I want folks to be aware of this. Right now, it's my understanding, I think there may be some discussion, but there is no county ordinance that allows you all to impound those vehicles if you catch folks street racing or taking over intersections. And that was one specific suggestion that someone had that seems like, somebody just posted about it in the chat, figuring out a way to get something on the books that allows you guys to not only write citations, but to impound those vehicles and make it a little more financially painful for these guys that want to turn our streets into the Indianapolis 500.
Well, that's not quite a true statement. I mean, it depends on the action. So what it is, the spectators, their cars can't be impounded. But if we catch the guys blocking the intersections and performing the donuts and the high-speed illegal activities, then those cars can be impounded. But like Captain Young said, the difficulty is, you know, it's one of two things. Either you're there to move them along, or if you're going to take enforcement action, then like CHP with their task force, they have a lot more bodies and cars available to do that. So if you're talking anywhere for us from 2 to 5 cars to take enforcement action and pin somebody in and try to take their car, it makes it a little more difficult. But if the street racer, if the guy is doing the donuts in the intersection, if we're able to get him, then yeah, his car gets impounded for 30 days. If it's somebody blocking the intersection with their cars, then yeah, their car can be taken for 30 days. But if it's just a spectator, because you have to understand when you roll up to a situation like that, getting to the core is difficult because you have spectators, you can't run them over, and then you have the cars blocking. So once you get there and try to turn your lights, siren on, it's different. You have to be careful because up at 5 points they're going 5 different directions, and so we don't want to be the cause of the way litigation goes now. If we cause somebody say we caused an accident because they were trying to get away. But if we are able to, my guys aren't afraid to do it, but it's just a matter of, our goal now is to try to prevent it, because I've been in those. I don't like when they take over, it makes it harder. So if we can prevent it, which is what we've tried an active role with that, with having guys posted with their lights on. I mean, they'd be foolish to try to take over an intersection with a cop there with his lights on. Then, if he's bold enough to do that, more power to him. But our strategy the last couple of weeks have worked where they've just keep driving through.
Got it. And we definitely appreciate everything that you all are doing at LASD and CHP. If there's anything that we can do more, I see Captain Young posted an email for CHP West LA, and also encouraging everybody to remind folks to drive safely. That reminds me, one of our neighbors unfortunately came barreling up Angeles Vista, smashed his car into a neighbor's car literally across the street from his own house. This guy's driving like a bat out of hell. And I'm out in the front yard quite a bit playing with my sons, and people come speeding up and down these streets. So I'm sure there are folks on that may have specific questions, so I'm going to shut up and let folks ask Captain Young and Sergeant Collins their questions. But we all need to be a little more safety conscious, and whatever it is that we think we're speeding to get to, it ain't that important, because one day, unfortunately, something bad is going to happen, and that can't be taken back once it happens. So I hope the young man at the bottom of Angeles Vista that did that has learned his lesson. Maybe he's listening, I don't know. But anyway, anybody have questions for these gentlemen?
John, there was a question about Wayfarer, and the question is, are we safe with them around?
Okay, well, we're gonna talk about Wayfinder. People keep mispronouncing that much to the chagrin of one of the supervisor's former deputies, but we're going to talk about Wayfinder shortly. Suffice to say that, and Sarge, you may have some more detailed information, I'm sure you do, but since that horrific incident in January, and since they shut down the STRTP program, I have not heard as much issues or activity out of there. So do you guys have anything to report on from a law enforcement perspective about Wayfinder?
No, since that time, haven't had any incidents as far as, the vandalisms, the fights, things of that nature. A few, the 920 missing reports, the runaways, but as far as criminal activity, none have been brought to my attention since that time. So maybe they've made a concerted effort to minimize those activities, or maybe they're not reporting. I'm not sure, but from Marina Station, we haven't had any issues.
Good. Good. Okay. Who's speaking?
That's Troy.
Okay, go ahead, Troy.
Hey, this question is mostly directed to CHP and Captain Young. Thank you for getting on, and you may have seen the email that I sent out the other night. But I do live on Angeles Vista, right near Rampal, so I see cars just going past the stop sign. Virtually, I take a poll, about every 10th car is running that stop sign. And I understand most of them are our neighbors, but yet and still, if they're doing that, then they're subject to whatever penalty that happens as well. And then as well as West Boulevard, I have a neighbor that I'm very close to. Same thing, the stop sign at West. Generally don't stop through there, and they're just going through at a rapid pace. And again, I sat there with the neighbor. About every 10th car is going through that stop sign. I think enforcement there is very critical. I've seen a couple of accidents. One gentleman that smashed into a tree and caught fire right near Rampall. And then shortly after that, another one hit the tree just prior to that. Didn't die, but it went at a high rated speed. Myself and Jackie, who was part of a team with the county that did a road diet study, and the county said they would revisit that. And I'm not sure if things have improved since we did the road diet. I know down at the lower end of Angeles Vista, where the street's funneling, most of those folks are saying they're getting their mirrors knocked off as cars are trying to go from 2 lanes to 1. So I think to revisit that may be a real good consideration. And then also, I spoke with John recently, right around Mullen and Angeles Vista, it's a steep curve there. I think possibly a stop sign or a blinking light there may help because folks are coming around the corner at a high rate of speed, and the accidents are just continuously happening there, as well as Angeles Vista and Presidio next to the Wayfinder school. That gentleman there sees someone run into his house at least once a quarter coming out there. So a traffic study, I think, is definitely imperative. And then, you know, I'm saying a lot, but I want to get all my points out. Lastly, right at Angeles Vista and Slauson, right at the 7-Eleven, there's an accident there almost monthly. And I think part of the problem there is cars are making a left onto Angeles Vista from Slauson going east, and that driveway is so close to the curb, cars are following one another, maybe too close, but as soon as a car darts into that driveway, into 7-Eleven, the following car has to stop in the middle of intersection, and therefore there's an accident, or someone is coming out of the 7-Eleven trying to make a left, and there's accident. So if there's a study that we could take, and I was there with an accident that just occurred talking to LAPD sergeant, and he said they respond to that intersection quite often with accidents. So just want your thoughts on all those points, Captain Young.
Thanks, Troy.
Mr. Green, you're coming in a little bit low volume and a little bit broken, just so, but I understand that you are reporting, you know, a handful of locations that you would like to see some additional enforcement. And if you would mind just sending those to me via the email address that I put on the chat. The other thing is that if you have a neighbor that is consistently, you know, driving recklessly and endangering your people in your neighborhood, if you feel I mean, everything that goes into our email address, we will keep you confidential. But I mean, I have no problem knocking on a door also and saying, hey, you gotta, you know, stop that, because if you don't, we are gonna start, you know, issuing tickets or whatever.
That's good to know. Thanks, Cap.
Yeah, exactly. Yep. And then, you know, whenever we see an issue that could result in improved traffic safety through maybe potential engineering, we have conversations with the county on that. However, you know, obviously that is the county's, they make the ultimate decision on what engineering solution that they want to use in a particular area.
Got it. Sergeant Collins, did you have any feedback on any of Troy's points?
No, that's because 2 of our deputies that actually took it upon themselves to actually patrol up there, I was just getting some feedback from them. In terms of Angeles Vista and West, they tend to sit up there and they go up and down Angeles Vista siding, and they said some of the same things too. That's a lot of the people that they stop are neighborhood folks, as opposed to. So they've given some warnings, but generally when they post up, they combination of citations and just general encouragement to slow down and pay attention to the traffic signs. So I was just getting that information from them, so I didn't quite catch everything that he.
No problem. No problem. Here's another, thanks for that, Troy. Here's another comment in the chat. Sarge, this is probably directed at you. There have been a few windows broken in homes west of Overhill. I'm sorry, west of Overhill on Meoland in the last few weeks. So this is in the witching hours between 2 and 4 a.m. So they're asking for, you know, increased patrols and presence over there. That's, you know, back to the resource question, I know.
Yeah, I mean, I can put it for them to do it. Just, you know, understand with that, because normally I think we have 2 cars that time. So between calls and stand on the boulevards and main streets, they can go through there. But like I said, sometimes, you know, it's not going to be a prolonged stay. They'll, you know, slow roll and see what's going on and then keep moving. But I will make sure that they give that area some extra attention.
Okay, thanks. I'm gonna, Captain Young and Sergeant Collins, if you guys can stay on for just a couple more minutes, I'm gonna ask our neighbors, Deborah and or Michelle, if they're on from Mount Vernon, to unmute and just share a little bit about the survey that I think Deborah posted in the chat and some of the things they've been working on trying to organize a block club and neighborhood watch there along Mount Vernon.
Sure. Thank you so much, John. Good afternoon, everyone. We, a very small group of neighbors along Mount Vernon, were motivated to start meeting by the break-in at the Davis Nitzberg house. Hirsch, the man in that house, has been participating in these conversations. That was at the 3600 block of Mount Vernon. And there are several issues that have come up, and we've sort of divided the way that we are working on these issues. Probably the biggest is our effort to understand the block clubs that do exist and the neighborhood watch that already occurs, and enhancing those, and also filling in where there are not such block clubs. From what we've learned so far, it seems that there's a stretch of Mount Vernon, probably from the 3600 up to about the 4200 block area, that may or may not be included in existing block clubs. So one thing that would be helpful is if you are president of a block club or have a block club and can put it in the chat. We're going to try to create a map of the area and where the block clubs do exist, and try to spur us to create some where they don't. Other issues that have come up for our group has been the question of speed bumps. I noticed someone put that in the chart. Mount Vernon is another kind of thoroughfare where people go awfully fast. We've discussed and have members of the group looking at cameras, trying to get crime statistics and working with the sheriff's office, looking at things like permit parking and even private security. We've encouraged all of our participants to join the Homeowners Association, and I think that's been very successful. And I did post a 10-question survey that takes only 2 minutes on SurveyMonkey, and ask everyone to fill it out. The only other thing I'll announce is that tomorrow at 7 o'clock, and if I can screen share, I'll show the flyer for that. We are going to look at organizing and exploring a block club for this area of Mount Vernon that seems to be, at this point, not a part of other existing block clubs. So I'll also post the Zoom information for that in the chat. And I see Fran Williams is on and Michelle is on. Other members of the group, if you have any comments or additional information, or if there's anything I left out, please add it. But thank you very much, John, for this and for all of your support of our effort. I thank Richard Rice, too, who's been working with us on the training information for block clubs.
Oh, it's our pleasure, Deborah. And as you all know, we support, encourage, and cheer for our neighbors whenever you guys decide to work on getting more organized, because that's the key. You know, UHA is the umbrella, but we definitely need to be organized at the street and block level. So whatever we can do to be helpful. I know we connected you with Paul further along Mount Vernon, and also I hope you guys got the message about the folks on Fairway. But you know, we need to be organized. We need to all know our neighbors and know our community. And when we see something that's out of place, in fact, I was turned around because somebody just was knocking and ringing on my doorbell. I don't know what that's about, but I'll deal with that later. But in all seriousness, we do need to be, you know, in tune and working with our partners in law enforcement, because, you know, hey, I have 2 young Black sons, and we all know that we don't want to just deploy law enforcement, you know, for every little thing that can be handled by a conversation or whatever. But there are certainly times when we need to make that call, and we need to be certain that when we do, we're going to get the professional and expert response that these gentlemen and their organizations have been giving us. So we appreciate that. And anything else on this point, guys?
No, well spoken, John, and we're committed to being good partners. So please feel free to give us a call. And I think you've been doing a fantastic job as, you know, the president and this meeting. And so thank you very much for keeping us invited.
Oh, thanks, Cap. It's these folks that we work with that makes the job a lot easier, having good neighbors and good fellow organizers. So, you know, we're all part of the same team.
Hey, John?
Yeah, go ahead, Daryl.
I just wanted to share, for what it's worth, from the chat that Debbie Wood shared that the speed bumps have been helpful on North Ridge between Overhill and La Brea. I don't know if people have noticed those or not, but I have. So I just wanted to share that just for the folks who are contemplating the speed bumps.
You know what, I wrote that down, John, and I'm going to actually travel that area myself just to check it out, because like I said, the county has been reluctant to put in speed bumps in other locations because of different reasonings. But I want to check that out myself, and maybe we can readdress some of the issue, you know, some of the speed bump requests in other areas based on the success of that particular street.
Yeah, that would be helpful, Cap, because, you know, what has obviously become a political process to us, because we've been talking about speed humps in different parts of the community for, you know, 10 plus years. But, you know, we need to do more of what we can do to slow these folks down, because you guys can't be on every corner. You know, maybe we do need to look at putting a traffic light on Angeles Vista at some point in a strategic spot to slow those folks down coming around the curve. But, you know, we'll keep working on it.
Hey, John.
Yeah, Charles.
Hey, sorry to interject, but again, they are working on Northridge, but I guess we are getting higher volumes of people speeding on our street, which is adjacent to it. So they're skipping Northridge now, and they're zooming up Mireland instead of on Northridge, which now has become more of a problem for another street in our neighborhood. So, I mean, I understand it and I agree with it, but it's transferred to our street. So it's working on Northridge, but not on Mireland.
Got it. All right. Thanks, Captain Young, Sergeant Collins. We appreciate you guys. And, you know, thanks for sticking with us for, you know, an hour plus before we even got to your topic. We appreciate you guys. All right. Moving on. I'm going to ask our neighbor, Tracy Purifoy, if she is still here, to unmute and kind of give everybody a brief update on what we've been doing to respond to Wayfinder and the issues there. And I will, while Tracy is speaking, I'm going to post in the chat the outstanding letter that Tracy just sent out on our behalf. So Tracy, go ahead. The floor is yours.
Hello, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm out and about running errands. But anyhow, so some of you saw yesterday evening that I copied you on a letter that I sent out to Ginger of DCFS, and I copied some of our government officials, such as Holly Mitchell, Klobuchar, and several others. And so we're kind of just holding them accountable. We have key questions that we need to know. We let them know our community's concerns, and they essentially, as you know, they shut down the STRP program. I don't know the exact initials, but they shut down one of the main programs that was causing most of the problems in the community, and they replaced it with some other programs. So we want to know exactly what programs they have in place so that we won't be so we won't have to deal with a bait and switch type of situation. We want to know exactly what programs they have. And then another thing that we are trying to do is set a limitation on the age groups that they take in, because of the main issues that we're dealing with are the older adolescents and the older teenagers, when you're dealing with the sex trafficking, the drug use, and so on and so forth, the menacing in the neighborhood. So we're trying to limit the age that come into the facility. So we're just basically waiting for Ginger to respond to the letter. I'll give her about a week, and then I'll circle back and just follow up, and we'll just take it from there. But we are going to hold our ground. We're going to stand our ground, and we're going to fight for our community. And that's it. Thank you, everyone, for your support and your assistance.
That's great. And Tracy, thank you for taking the lead and leading the charge with respect to the committee we formed to deal with this issue. You know, again, just like we were saying with respect to the Neighborhood Watch issue, you know, we as organizers are only as effective as our neighbors and fellow members that back us up and kind of join in the effort. So Tracy and several other people, I want to single out Jacelyn and Helen. They Jacelyn is still working, Helen is retired, but they both are professionals that have extensive experience working with children and families issues. And they were both able to participate in that task force that met recently, and were basically giving suggestions and crafting ideas to present to the Board of Supervisors as they figure out how to deal with this perplexing issue of how are they going to accommodate all these kids and juveniles in the system that need some extensive help. And, you know, with the system changing and folks putting less and less emphasis on punitive measures, you know, how are we as a society going to address this need? And clearly it's a need, you know, just like affordable housing, it's something that has to be dealt with. But the issue, of course, with Wayfinder is that we felt like the brunt of it was being dealt with unfairly and inequitably directly on our community, and through a facility that had not done its part in terms of disclosing and preparing itself, training staff, spending the necessary resources to handle these troubled youth. And as a result, unfortunately, we saw some bad things happen. So Tracy, again, thanks. I don't know if anyone else on the committee wants to speak on this. I know our friend and neighbor, Jason Lombard, is on, and Jason is now working with Wayfinder, trying to help them improve and up their game when it comes to building relationships with their neighbors and community members surrounding them. So Jason, I don't know if you want to step in and add anything, but.
I did. And then just wanted to, you know, I came by and briefly introduce myself to the committee, but wanted to, for those of you that have worked with me on other projects, I think that you'll find that I communicate pretty straightforward. There will be transparency in what we talk about. And, you know, I will honor your committee system. So I look forward to sitting down. Tracy, once again, thank you for all of your work on this and making sure that, you know, number one, with Wayfinder, you know, we want to make sure that communication is there. I've had conversations with them at this point and see that there are some things that we'll be able to communicate to you that are that have definitely been put into place and are planned to be put into place beyond the ideas of the STRTP program being disbanded, which was already actually in place prior to the incident that happened. But I think what you'll see from the communication that we'll be able to have, and even I was encouraged to hear that the sergeant said that he hasn't had, in increase even since that happened. He hasn't had as many of the calls, primarily just for the runaways. But, between myself and then we also have Andrew on here, who will be assisting to make sure that we're communicating, that Wayfinder is in a place where you feel like they are a community partner, because I think it's just a matter of getting it back to that. Back to where you feel like those, even though there might be gates there, that we can start to get some engagement between UHA 2 and then, I think even the broader community and there, things like making sure, I saw in the chat that Cherie, thank you for that comment, Cherie, about trying to see what we can do to engage and assist with our Black and brown youth that are there. But I think what you'll see going forward is you're going to see some changes, and you'll definitely see changes on the communication front, and I'll be leading those efforts. So look forward to it.
That's great. Thanks, Jason. Anything else on Wayfinder?
A couple of things from chat. I think Jason addressed some of what Sherry Franklin had mentioned, but she also had asked about requiring that Wayfinder send some type of monthly operations report to ensure that they're actually spending fund on direct services. And there was a question from Robin Mosley earlier about Wayfinder possibly closing.
It's not closing. What's happened is the STRT program has been shut down, and I can attest to it personally. I was there yesterday, and the entire building was being repurposed. So that program has been shut down. And then, like I said, I think it's probably better served to do it in the committee setting, have those conversations, then bring it back as an agenda item to the larger group. But you'll see that those changes are there. And then the other question was, I did take down what the request that Cherie had about the monthly statement. So I will take that back and see. That's just not something that I can answer, but I'll definitely have, even by next month, I'll have an answer for you.
That's great, Jason. And obviously just following up on, what we've discussed here today and previously at other meetings, that's why Tracy put that letter together and shot it out there to follow up on our prior correspondence with the county and the state. But, having things documented so that, those of us that are following this and then the larger community can actually track what's going on and what the commitments are, that's going to be critical. So we definitely appreciate that.
Agreed.
All right, folks. Let's keep this moving since we're now at 3:51 and hoping to be done by 4. If you guys can stick in there for a couple more minutes, I've got a little treat for you at the end, as we always have a little nugget or two. But I want to talk for a minute about local politics. Congratulations to our friend and neighbor, now State Senator Sidney Kamlager. A virtual round of applause. I see some people clapping. That's fantastic. We are proud of you. I don't know if she's still on, but we have your back 110%. Have not had a chance. One of the bills that she's working on has to do with affordable housing. We haven't had a chance to take a thorough look at it and give her our comments, but we most certainly will. Of course, now that she has elevated, that's created an opening in her former 54th Assembly District seat. And I'll just go ahead and say it. It seems like everybody and their mama is running for the seat. Quite a few people have announced that they're running. Some names are familiar, some are not. But more important than an individual candidate, it strikes me that we as a community should talk more and focus more on what are the qualities and what are the policies and the initiatives that we want to see whoever gets that seat fulfill and focus on. So I thought I'd put that out there to you all as a group and just get you to be thinking about that. You may hear some further discussion about perhaps having a candidates forum, the group that we're affiliating with that includes homeowners associations and community groups from around the region and literally around the state is also looking at this race, and we may do something collectively with them. But, suffice to say that we are not interested in, and most likely are not going to be supportive of, any candidate that appears to be more interested in, chasing after large political donations and not being able to come before our community and explain to us how they're going to make sure that not only are they pursuing an agenda that deals with fairness, justice, and equity in terms of our less privileged folks and law enforcement and all of that, which we all clearly are committed to. And, you know, on a personal level, I get up every day and go to work at my affordable housing company. So, you know, we understand and appreciate and support that, but we need to know how are we going to do what needs to be done and not have the kind of crazy stuff that's coming down the pipe now from Sacramento about basically outlawing and getting rid of single family communities. That just doesn't seem to make a lot of sense to me, that somehow or another, to take care of the folks that need more affordable housing, you know, have to come and penalize the folks that have managed to get their little piece of the American dream, or, you know, live in a place like Windsor Hills, View Park, Baldwin Hills, View Heights, Ladera Heights, predominantly African-American communities comprised of single-family homeowners and small mom and pop landlords, et cetera. Just like Prop 19, you know, we're not going for that okie doke. There's enough out, this is a big universe. There's enough out here for everybody if we're smart about what we do. So we're interested in smart solutions and supporting those people that are serious about finding and implementing those. So I don't know if anybody else has any thoughts to share on that, but that's just my personal view as we get ready for this barrage of information and mail and whatever else is coming for the 54th Assembly special election on May 18th. That's coming up quick. Let's see, what else do we want to talk about? Someone mentioned to us Ralph's Market at Slauson and Crenshaw apparently has been slated to close, along with several other Ralph's. And I don't know if anybody wants to comment on that. As for me personally, having contacted Ralph's and talked to the manager in that store about some gray meat that I saw over there a couple of times that I've been in there, that was actually, get this, it was not only gray, but it was marked down like, hey, we've got a great discount for you, some gray turkey sausage or gray lunch meat. But now this is, you know, I know there's some people that are circulating a petition and trying to do what they can to keep it open. And I understand, you know, that part of our community, that's Hyde Park, you know, underserved, food desert, all of that, we get that. But there's gotta be a better solution, folks, than us having to continue to depend on people like that for our basic needs that clearly don't have our best interests at heart. I know there's something called the SOLA, South LA Food Co-op, that's been looking for space and talking about how they're gonna get going and, you know, soliciting our support. And of course, we as an organization formed the UHA Smart Development Fund precisely to support things like that, where, you know, it's a community-oriented solution. I just wanted to put that out there and encourage you all to focus on that. That actually is right next to Dorset Village, which is slated to be redeveloped. I don't know what the status of it is, but this wealthy billionaire named Jeff Green in Florida bought that property some years ago. So again, we're hearing our friends from LA County Regional Planning talking about, hey, we need this many affordable housing units in South LA and unincorporated LA County. And there's Dorset Village right there with mostly low-income folks living in it. And that's going to be raised and replaced probably by mostly market rate housing to take advantage of the Crenshaw subway. We can't keep doing the same old thing over and over again and expect different results. If we really want to address our ills as a society, we've got to get serious about it and invest the sweat equity and the dollars and make the commitment to have an impact. So anyway, I guess we're in the new business and announcements part of the meeting now that I'm running my mouth incessantly. So I'll open the floor and see if anyone else has any announcements to make or any new business. I do know also regarding the Baldwin Hills Crenshaw Mall and the proposed sale, I have not heard about a specific agreement being signed, but I do believe that someone has been selected by the group that represents the owners, and that process continues. So we'll make sure we keep everybody updated as we learn more detail about that. I'm sure, you know, if there's somebody on the call that knows more, they're welcome to chime in or offer more information.
Hey, John, I did want to just reiterate your point about the Community Development Fund.
Yep, please.
have the unenviable job of having to ask people for money. So here we go. At the last meeting, I brought it up, and I just wanted to kind of give recognition to some folks who responded to the call. You know, a lot of the things that we're talking about today, all of these good people who are volunteering their time are doing very hard work. And so we want to make sure that we have the necessary funds for expenses available when we have to exercise, practices that require an investment as well, just to both support positive developments as well as to, challenge those who seek to bring developments that we see as negative. So we always are looking to raise funds to do that. So I've included once again in the chat the link to our community development fund, a crowdfunding platform for everyone to go and take a look at. And all of our neighbors who wanted to be recognized are there to recognize, who didn't want to be anonymous. And so I just wanted to recognize some people since that last meeting who stepped up. And so I put their names in the chat for all of you to see. So thanks for that.
Thanks, Daryl. Any other announcements or new business? I know someone,
John,
go ahead, Jason.
I just wanted to go ahead and confirm that there has not been on the Baldwin Hills Crenshaw Plaza, there has not been a new bidder. There has not been a new bidder that has been confirmed as having been awarded to. But obviously I think last month, I told everyone about the bidding process. I told them that there were a few people that were being considered, and then that was closed. And now it is my understanding that they have made a choice, but that hasn't been announced yet.
Got it. Thanks for that clarification, Jason. Anything else? I was going to say, I know someone.
Hi, Paula Ricketts.
Go ahead, Paula. Yeah.
Hi. I wanted to let you all know that early in the morning, we're having about 5 to 6 different trainers that are conducting business at the Reuben Ingold Park. They're bringing in tires and they're putting ropes on trees, and it's becoming a hazard to even go up there in the morning. We've got quite a few seniors, who are rehabbing, and the people are not very considerate of those people. So I did reach out to the county parks and spoke to Kevin Murray. He did cite some of the people, but they're still there. And he said that it's best for us to probably contact our supervisor to see whether or not she can impose some additional suggestions or motivations to get them to go away. They offered them to go to the city park. They offered them to go to Ladera Park, but they are standing up there.
Paula, let me ask you, thanks for pointing that out. You said you spoke to Kevin Murray. Is that former state senator Kevin?
No, sir. No,
okay.
Sir. This is a younger version. Okay. And he's he's a manager of the parks in our area.
Got it. So did he refer you to the sheriff's office that patrols the park at all?
Yes, and he's been calling the sheriff's office. They have come out to cite the people, but they're not doing it on a consistent basis. Okay.
What time of the morning are you noticing that? And is it weekday or weekend mornings?
It's some of them are there early in the morning between 6 to 10, and then some are there all day long.
Monday through Friday?
Monday through Friday.
Okay, so on the weekends, this is not an issue, but Monday through Friday.
I don't go on the weekends, so I'm not sure. I hit the beaches on the weekend, so I'm not sure.
Got
but
it.
I do, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm there every morning just about, and she is correct. They are using that as a training camp. However, the sheriff and the county has been out there, and yes, they did get ticketed, and the trainer that used that tire is no longer using that anymore because he was cited.
Okay.
However, it seems as though there are a lot of other trainers are now coming. So yes, we do need to, I think the way to handle it is that we do talk to the supervisor. I think a simple sign saying no trainers would do the job.
I'd like to make an additional suggestion, if I may, ladies.
Yes.
I'd like everybody to write down this number provided to me by our friend Sergeant Collins, and hopefully some of you already have it, 213-974-8000. I believe that's the part of the Sheriff's Department that patrols the parks, and I'm going to look and see if I
No,
have
they
it.
have come before. I've called them before.
Yes.
Right, but that's you individually. That's not us as 20, 30, 40, or 50 people.
Okay.
See what I'm saying?
Mhm.
So it's a little different when you or Paula are calling, as individuals, but when we collectively say, hey, we're going to call and make sure that you guys are, you guys know how this works, the squeaky wheel.
Yeah.
So if this is an ongoing issue, which it sounds like it is, and there's some clearly stated rules at the park of what is and isn't acceptable, we just need to make sure somebody's there to enforce that. So
Well, I think that's the main
number,
problem. There are no specific rules that says they cannot train there.
Okay.
Now there is a noise ordinance.
Yes.
Okay, so that one that can work. So they can only do what is available, in which that is the only thing, the noise. So they really think that they have a right to be in the park. And one of the sheriffs informed them that that was not a regular park, that is a community walking park.
Right.
And so that is the difference. And so, yeah, I agree, calling Sergeant Collins would do it, but I think we need to meet with the supervisors to get something concrete as an ordinance so that they will have something to enforce.
So Helen, it is an ordinance. There is one. You have to have a permit to do anything in the park, and they are not issuing any permits. And that's why they offered him a permit at another park and he refused it. That's
Okay.
Mr. Curls, yes.
Oh, yes, I know exactly who you're talking about.
Yes.
So
Is that the one who teaches the boxing?
Yes, sir.
Yes, yes.
So what we'll do, ladies and gentlemen, we will follow up with Mr. Murray over in Parks. I hope everybody will call us, not Sergeant Collins, it's actually the LA Sheriff's Parks Bureau at 213-974-8000. And we will follow up. So the next time that we come together, we'll have some more information. And hopefully, Paula, please keep us, and I know Helen will as well, but keep us posted about how well we are or are not progressing on this point. Because I know that park has been an ongoing challenge for those of you that live right there, on Maymont and Mount Vernon and close to Ingold Park. So.
John, can I say one thing about the park? I'm sorry.
Go ahead, quickly.
Quickly, we all walk there. I think we can serve as ambassadors. I do when I see people conducting activities. I think we can circulate a letter from UHA and make sure that the people using the service understand that this is, impacting the community, and maybe even post a sign, and then we can help enforce it. But people need to know what to do and how to, because noise, it's the sign there. It also has to be ambient, and there's a sign that says you can't have things too loud. So I think we can all participate there.
Thank you, Sherry.
Great. Thanks a lot, ladies. Jason, you had your hand up?
I did. Very quickly, for those, and I'll put it in the chat now, for those of you who have not gotten vaccinated at this point, the Urban League is offering the Johnson & Johnson vaccine at Baldwin Hills Crenshaw Plaza. If you follow the link that I just put in there, the laul.org/vaccine, you can sign up for an appointment there through the Urban League. And then also I'm not saying this, I know it's not live on YouTube, but if you have an issue with the appointments, it has been beneficial to some that have gone down and been able to talk with people down there outside of the appointments. So
yeah.
Hey, Jason, I think the appointments are they're not adding any new appointments right now when you go to that particular link, but I guess they say they will eventually open it back up.
They have a lot of cancellations. I was able to because of the cancellations.
And I mean, there's been some days where they've gone down there. I mean, where people have gone down and been able to just without even waiting very long, they were able to get one.
Yeah, I went myself. Yeah. So.
Me too. Just go. They have a lot of cancellations at that site. That's the issue, and they don't want to throw the medicine away.
One thing that I do want to bring up is that with Wayfinder, they've actually been looking into providing the Pfizer vaccine. And there's a survey that they were doing. I told them, I'm pretty sure that people in View Park and Windsor Hills and then even surrounding would be interested in having that vaccination site. But I guess maybe we can talk about that offline, John, or others, or if people want to just chime in quickly, if you don't mind. I think they have an opportunity to get the Pfizer vaccine through MLK Hospital and then be able to offer it there to the people that are in the immediate neighborhood. So.
Yeah, I appreciate you for bringing both of those points up, Jason, about the Sears at Baldwin Hills and Wayfinder. Obviously, the vaccines are going to become more accessible and easier for folks to get. And obviously we all, as soon as we're able to and eligible, we should get vaccinated. That's the only way that I know of we're going to beat this stupid virus down. So anybody who's in a position to credibly, bring it forward and make it available, the Urban League, St. John's Well Child Center, THE Clinic, Wayfinder, whatever, will get us that information. We talked about that at our last meeting. We need to get a little bit better at updating our website and making that information available. But again, I know one or two people did volunteer to help with that. So, getting that information out to those and helping people navigate, maybe people that aren't as familiar with making appointments and being on the internet, that's all critical. So hopefully in 2 months' time, by the time we get to May or June, more of us will be vaccinated and this won't be as much of an issue, but we definitely have to keep pressing forward on that front for sure. I don't see anything else on my notes. So lastly, since it's now 4:10 and we're 10 minutes past where we're supposed to be done, I'm going to share my screen and share a little something special with you all from one of my better known Morehouse brothers, if you'll bear with me, if I can find it here. I think you'll enjoy this.
Now, when I say questioning the whole society, it means ultimately coming to see that the problem of racism, the problem of economic exploitation, and the problem of war are all tied together. These are the triple evils that are interrelated. And if you will let me be a preacher just a little bit. One night a juror came to Jesus. And he wanted to know what he could do to be saved. Jesus didn't get bogged down on the kind of isolated approach of what you shouldn't do. Jesus didn't say, now, Nicodemus, you must stop lying. He didn't say, Nicodemus, now you must not commit adultery. He didn't say, now, Nicodemus, you must stop cheating if you're doing that. He didn't say, Nicodemus, you must stop drinking liquor if you're doing that excessively. He said something altogether different because Jesus realized something basic. That if a man will lie, he will steal. And if a man will steal, he will kill. So instead of just getting bogged down on one thing, Jesus looked at him and said, Nicodemus, you must be born again. In other words, your whole structure must be changed. A nation that will keep people in slavery for 244 years will thingify them and make them things. And therefore they will exploit them and poor people generally, economically. And a nation that will exploit economically will have to have foreign investments and everything else, and it will have to use its military might to protect them. All of these problems are tied together. What I'm saying today is that we must go from this convention and say, America, you must be born again.
All right. Well, leave it to the good doctor to set it off on the right note. I always personally, we know about the other speeches that everybody listens to all the time, but once you get to 1967 and you listen to what Doc was talking about then, right up until they took him out in April of 68, this speech was from August of 1967 that he was given to SCLC at a convention. You can really hear what it was that made him such a threat, because he's really talking about the fundamental issues in our society and in this country that make it so difficult. And, here we are in the 21st century in the year of our Lord 2021, sitting around wondering if what happened the other day in Atlanta is a hate crime. I mean, who cares whether it's a hate crime or not? You have Asian brothers and sisters under attack and under assault, and as are many other people of color and other folks that are discriminated against. As a society, certain things just have to become unacceptable. Just unacceptable as a matter of course. We talk about law enforcement and what goes on there. I don't know what's going to happen with this guy that's on trial for George Floyd, but I remember April of 92 and the run up to that from Rodney King's trial and all that stuff. And I was telling people then, they're not going to convict those guys. So it has to be unacceptable, folks. And we have to, as a society, stand up for what's right, no matter what the cost, and really listen to what our leaders and our heroes are trying to tell us. Even 50 years later from beyond the grave, those words are still powerful. So with that, unless anybody has anything else, I'm going to say it's a wrap. And I appreciate all you all for hanging in there. And
John, I don't know if Jason had another comment or was your hand?
you're gonna give the last.
Oh, that was a clap. I thought it was a hand up. My apologies.
He was raising the fist in support, man.
Right.
No, thank you guys. I appreciate and we appreciate everything. I want to thank all my fellow board members, Tony, Michael, Daryl, Joanne, Richard, Helen, Aaron. Couldn't do it without you guys. Deborah, Tracy, everybody that's doing your part on the committee level. We really appreciate that. And lastly, I see my mom is on. Thank you, Mom, for that encouraging chat points you put up in the chat. We appreciate you guys and enjoy the weekend.
Thank you. Thank you, John. Thank you, everyone.
You know how to find us if you need us. Take care. Stay safe. Get vaccinated.
Have a wonderful weekend.
You as well.
And see you at the park, Dr. Helen.
Yes, absolutely. Let's be eyes and ears.
Yes.
I correct everything I see on the park.
Yes, you do, Helen. Yes, you do.
We want to see everybody We want to see everybody back here next month.
Yes,
Stay
you will.
safe. Get your shots.
Got
Keep
mine.
your mask on.
Yes.
Stay to 6 feet. Even if they say 3 feet, just do the 6 feet and be sure.
Did you see the line at the CVS in Ladera?
No.
They're vaccinating over there now, right?
Yeah.
Oh, good.
They were there again yesterday.
Yeah.
Rite Aid is also doing it. I got mine in Rite Aid.
Really? Oh.
Yes.
Mhm.
Crenshaw and Slauson.
Does
Yeah,
CVS have
about to
Johnson & Johnson?
I asked and they had Pfizer yesterday, so I don't know if they changed it. It was all ages, a matter of fact.
If you're curious about the details of any of these vaccinations, you can go online to either the CDC or the county website. Just put find COVID vaccination near me, and all that information will come up, including what type of vaccination is available at that site.
Oh, okay.
Excellent. Excellent. Say it again, John.
Let me see if I can pull it up real fast.
Also, Kaiser Permanente is doing shots, and vaccinations. I don't believe you need to be a member of Kaiser.
Right.
Oh.
So it's this one that's on the screen now, vaccinefinder.org.
Okay.
I think it's run by the Centers for Disease Control, but you can put in, any zip code and it'll tell you our zip code within 10 miles. And you can zoom in and you can see
Excellent.
Where the vaccine sites are around you. And then you can click and find out,
Excellent.
what type of vaccines are available in stock, out of stock.
Oh, great.
All right.
No excuse.
All right.
No.
None.
Well, hey, the post-meeting conversations are sometimes as good as the regular meetings.
That was a great meeting, you know.
Pull out a deck of cards, we'll play some Bitwin.
Yeah.
I can't wait till we can do that again.
I know, boy, we're gonna have the biggest party ever.
Yeah,
yeah.
On that score, we should at some point, you know, I don't know when it's going to be truly safe to do that, but hopefully it coincides with sometime toward the end of this summer where we can get people together and have our annual get together again.
Yeah.
That would be good.
I'm thinking sometime toward the end of the summer. I'm not so sure about what the president said about July 4th. I'm not getting excited about that.
Hey, John, you can't do Bitwist until people can fly to Boston, because I send a lot of folks to Boston.
Oh, please.
Oh my God.
Yeah,
no,
that's that professor of Wiscology talk.
Right.
Boston.
Corny.
You got to have some hours to know about that.
Yeah, that Proposition 19 is gonna mess a lot of people up, boy.
Yes.
Yeah, I think
it is.
Our government, you know, we have a gangload of so-called progressive folks here in California that are in power. And I never thought I would say this, but every now and then you need some right-wing Republicans to try to balance out some of this crazy talk, because even the progressive folks, if they don't have anybody to, and again, this gets back to debate and back and forth, but if you don't have anybody to balance you out and check you when you're going too far, hey, you can mess things up too in the wrong direction.
Yep.
That's true.
Yep. So which party do you think is responsible for this Proposition 19?
That's a good question. I think that, you know, generally speaking, it's probably the folks in government that want to see more money come from property tax revenues that are responsible for it.
Okay, no party in particular necessarily.
Yeah, I mean, this is a money grab. This is them trying to deal with the long-term impacts of Prop 13, right? They're slowly eroding the you know, the availability of and the accessibility of Prop 13 to people. And of course, for us, I mean, you know, generally speaking, you're not talking about moguls and people that have hundreds of properties to bequeath. You know, you're talking about folks that have worked hard to get what they've got, and they're trying to pass it on, and now they're going to be their heirs are going to be taxed unnecessarily. That's crazy.
Right. That's real crazy. And on top of that, Prop 13, the biggest problem with that wasn't even the homeowners; it was the commercial properties that they had in the Prop 13.
Exactly. And as KRS One would say, now why is that? You know, the commercial property owners are riding on our back, where they could afford to pay some extra, you know, differential in terms of the base property value and the increase in a reassessment. Absolutely. So, you know, again, this is what happens, folks, when I think most of our issues can be traced back to the way our government has been really bought and paid for and co-opted by the special interests, because those are the folks whose water they're carrying. Those are the folks who say, hey, rezone these properties so we can do this, that, or the other, or increase density in single family areas. So us Wall Street banks that took houses from people and made them homeless can now turn them into multifamily units and make more money.
Right.
Don't forget about the small businesses, because that's really, to me, that's really the way out. That's the way to be successful. So when the big corporations are one thing, but the small mom and pop folks who are just trying to get their piece of the pie, they get they get treated like the bigger businesses.
Right. Exactly. Yeah, they do.
Exactly.
And that's where a lot of immigrant groups have that in place. Koreans who've moved in have small businesses, and that's how they build their wealth. And we need to do that more.
Did you know Disneyland is under Prop 13?
Right.
Oh, wow.
Commercial property. There you
Absolutely.
have it. Yeah.
Wow.
That's the encouraging thing about some of the policies that are being put forth now. You know, I mean, public health notwithstanding, because that's critical, but you know, housing, universal basic income, just some of the things that need to happen to help those folks at the bottom. It's encouraging to hear, you know, folks at the national level talk about infrastructure, for example. I mean, we look around our streets. When's the last time the streets have been repaved in the unincorporated LA County area?
Right. I think about that every day that I'm driving.
Yep. So
I just want to recognize, John, Susan Bradshaw just did donate $300 to our community development fund. So I don't know.
That's great. Wow.
I don't know if she's on or not, but if she is, we want to give her a round of applause and thank her.
Yep.
For
Outstanding.
Absolutely.
Close
That's
to the
great.
thank you.
You know, hey, most of us aren't mega billionaires or gazillionaires, but if we put our little coins and dollars and ducats together, you'd be surprised at the damage we can do.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly. Yep.
That's the key.
Exactly.
So, yep.
Well, you all have a great rest of your day. I'm starving.
Yep.
Meet.
I've run out of water, so it's time to wrap the meeting up.
Yes.
Yeah.
The second meeting.
Take it, guys.
Have a
Thank you all
safe
so
week,
much.
everybody.
I
Have a
ate
safe-
lunch at 1:30. I
everybody.
learned
Thank
about
you.
that.
All
All
right.
right.
Always
Love
eat
you.
at 1:30,
Bye.
then you'll be ready.
Love you.
Joanne, you look gorgeous, girl.
Who-
Who?
who-
Joanne.
Oh,
Oh, you
she
know what?
always looks gorgeous.
You know what? I tell people I'm Mrs. Frederick Douglass with this white hair.
I love it. And
That's
Miss
all right.
Bardan, I just saw her. She's gorgeous.
Oh, shucks.
All right.
As
Love-
usual.
Thank you, Tony. Thank you.
As usual.
All right. It's
Hey, everybody.
Bye, everyone.
Blessings.
Hi,
Wow.
Gwen.
Bless
Hi.
you.
See Gwen.
Hi, Sarah.
Hi, Sarah.
John, I got my second one.
Outstanding.
Oh,
Oh, good for
Very
you.
good. Very
Good
good.
one.
Glad that worked out.
We are too.
yeah,
Oh,
wonderful.
Yeah.
oh, good.
Be safe.
All
Yeah.
right.
All right. Be safe, everyone.
Be
All
safe.
right.
See you all later.
Okay, bye-bye.
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 Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
All
All
right.
right.